Good morning, Don. How are you?
I'm good, Melody. How are you?
Good. Last week we were busy. We didn't manage to record anything.
No, I was working from home as well last week, so didn't get the opportunity.
So maybe this week we do three episodes.
Yeah, let's cram them all in.
So we were going to talk about culture, and culture has, we're talking about the culture of all the nationalities we recruit and how do we all work as a team. Talk about the culture of the company, what our expectations are, what does culture in the company mean, and generally all the relationships and all our communications. That's what we're going to talk about. So where do you want to start first?
Yeah. So I think let's start with the franchisees. Let's start with them because they're all from the different diverse backgrounds, different nationalities. And I think in the beginning, we struggled to communicate well with the franchisees and adapt our communication styles to suit them because everybody is just so different and everybody's got big personalities and that was a challenge in itself in the beginning. I think. How did you find it?
It's one thing. You and I, we've worked with each other for 10 years and we work with the Edinburgh branch. It's one thing running our own business and winging it. It's another thing when you want to teach others to do the same. So we had to put everything into structure, didn't we?
Yeah.
And for some of you who listened to some of our other podcasts, by the way, we've had 30 listens so far.
Wow.
For our 3 episodes. I come from Iran, and I don't know necessarily if it's a country thing or it's my style, but I used to be very direct, and I am still very direct. But I learned throughout running Meloosha Homecare Edinburgh that it's not necessarily always appreciated here.
Yeah.
And I was very passionate, and I used to go with my heart, and it wasn't always the right decision. And Karen, who used to work for us, used to always say, Melody, just sleep on it. You can write that email, don't send it, sleep on it. You can make that phone call, don't do it now.
That's really good advice.
Sleep on it. And through her coaching, I managed how to be less sharp in my communications. Now it's the other way around. Our first 6 franchisees were all from Nigerian nationality, and they're like me, they're very direct. So when we try to speak to them in a roundabout way and speak in a British way,
diplomatic and go round without being so direct,
they all actually pulled us out separately and said, we know you're trying to say something, just say it. I don't get the point.
Just say black and white.
Just say black and white. So we've now adopted that approach, but it's not going to work with anyone necessarily because, for example, Karen doesn't like that approach. The way you speak to her should be very diplomatic. The team in Meloosha Homecare Edinburgh, if you were direct with them, I think they would all resign. So, and our new franchisees are now from Yemen, Saudi, Syria, and Egypt. So that's going to be another lesson learned.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've introduced based on that, because we did find communications a challenge, we've introduced the DISC personality profile, and so everybody will complete a DISC personality profile, and that helps us kind of see what communication styles really suit that person. We ask people how they prefer to communicate. Some people like to do it face to face, some people like telephone call, Teams, emails, and we kind of adapt our style to what they prefer to do. So
and then by now we you get to know people because we have meetings with them, especially to begin with, almost every day, sometimes several times a day. We talk to them on Teams, so it's pretty much face to face. I know for certain generation, Teams is not face to face. For us, it is now, isn't it?
Yeah, and we have. So some people, we have regular meetings, weekly meetings. Some we have fortnightly, some we have monthly, and other franchisees will touch base with them more on their terms than it is ours.
And so we've established a very good relationship between us and our franchisees. And the next challenge is how to set the culture in the whole company, because what good means to us doesn't necessarily means the same thing in other cultures, and certain vocabulary we use here that maybe doesn't translate exactly the same in other cultures. But how do we transfer Meloosha's culture across the board with all these different personalities and nationalities coming on board? And what do they think culture is, and what do they think a good line of communication is?
I think one of the things that really helped was actually doing a bit of research on the different cultures that we're working with. So again, I would recommend that to managers and the franchisees. Your staffing team will be of diversity. There's lots of different nationalities, different cultures, different beliefs, different preferences, and having a bit of an understanding of your staffing team really helps to see where they're coming from, or maybe it is a cultural difference. So I think that by watching some videos on YouTube about different cultures really gave us a bit of an understanding as well.
And I think don't be scared to ask questions either.
Yeah.
You know, I think we now have a trust with our franchisees, that they understand where we're coming from. I remember one of our franchisees, one of their parents passed away, and I called another person and said, what's appropriate? You know, in my culture, for example, we maybe send them flowers.
Yeah.
And the reason I hesitated because the franchisee was a man, and men are not like, if I send flower. And she said, no, don't. That's just, you know, in our culture we don't do that. Don't bother sending flowers.
Yeah.
You know, just do nothing. I don't know whether it was the right advice or not, but the point is, ask questions. You know, it's a good thing to admit you don't know what you don't know, and go and get information. One of the challenges we have, and I suppose it's because our network is relatively new, our franchises are young and inexperienced, and you know, they're building a business from scratch. So some of the challenges we have is how, and we work in care, so we're heavily regulated. How do we, you know, we're constantly coming up with ways of how to translate a lot of our processes, why they are, why do we do them, what's the result, what's the outcome. And you know, it's not till they make a very costly mistake then their penny drops and say, oh, that process that Dawn keeps saying to follow because of these things. And
and I think we've built up our processes over quite a long period of time, and a lot of them have been
10 years
strengthened through mistakes that were made in the past. And there's a reason they're so robust and in depth, because they work. If you follow them correctly, they do work. I'm not saying everything comes with a challenge, but I think when it comes to culture, especially if you're new in leadership, or you're a new director, you've never really managed a lot of people before or led a team before, I think speaking about your vision can be, I think you need to speak for the heart more than have it like a script, and getting people on board that's going to be working alongside you on board with your vision. I think setting expectations is very important. You talk about them all the time, and you talk about your values, and what do the values really look like into practice. It's not just telling people about compassion, and we're a compassionate workforce, and respect people. That's clients, staff, each other when we're talking. Promote dignity with everybody that we're coming into contact with, and providing excellence. But what is that really? What does that mean?
And also, exactly. So there's depends what you're talking about, because the word culture, I remember when I first used to hear it, like, what does that even mean? And I remember listening to a training video or a podcast that this person explained it really well. In terms of culture in the company, it's basically manage expectations and letting people around you, your staff, your clients, your suppliers, to know what you're willing to put up with, what your boundaries are, and where you draw the line. That's how you set culture. In terms of culture in our little branches and our staff, it still means the same thing, but also then we're now recruiting all these different nationalities. And how does it translate when our carers go into people's homes who come from a culture that they don't necessarily eat cereals in the morning, they don't know what porridge is. Some European countries, if there's a smoked bacon involved, they eat it raw, they don't cook it, smoked meat. And so there's that angle to it. But in terms of, I suppose, because we're franchisors, we can talk about, as a company, as an office, what you're willing to put up with, what your boundaries are, what you're allowing your staff and your team to get away with. And when you set boundaries, you're setting cultures. And you're creating a good expectations around you, where people know how to treat you and how to behave around you and how to be in your business.
I think a safe learning culture is very important as well. Making sure that your staff's feeling valued, and that comes from basically listening to what they're telling you. If they're unhappy or things aren't working and they're telling you certain areas, and it might be one or two staff, it might be all your staff, it's really important that you listen, but they feel safe to come and express that to you so you can fix it. And that goes for complaints. We use complaints as feedback, and we try and resolve the complaints, but we'll look at them as a whole to say, right, is there something else that needs fixed? What's causing all these complaints to come in that are kind of similar? So we always advise to audit your complaints on a monthly basis, and then look at it as a whole rather than just looking at them individually, because it might get you to the bottom of why things are not working well. So,
and communication is really important. How you communicate. I tell my franchisees, when a complaint comes, use that as an opportunity to strengthen your relationship with your client, because we're human, mistakes happen, things go wrong. But how do you go about fixing it and reassure the client and put measures in place to make sure it doesn't happen again, things will improve, the clients is safe, your staff are safe. This is what builds relationships. How you communicate, it builds relationships and it strengthens your business.
Builds trust. If somebody's complaining, if somebody's put a complaint in and you're not really taking it that serious, or you've not seen it as, it's really important to get this, like, to communicate back to the person that you understand what's happened and you're going to look at resolving it. I think the communication, and if somebody can see that actually this is important to that person and you're doing everything you can to resolve that, then it does build up trust. That person will be quite happy to stay in your service. But if you do the opposite and you either ignore it, or you think, maybe I'll send an email but I won't do any actions and we won't resolve that complaint, then the reality of that is that person will probably leave your service based on you not acting on fixing things.
And what have you been telling them recently about the money?
Complaints can be very costly if they're not handled correctly. So if you think about a client, and let's say a client's worth about £18,000 to £20,000 per year, and you don't resolve that complaint, a complaint's come in and you acknowledge it, but you don't do anything on the back of that, or you forget about it, or you think that it's resolved, and you've not actually asked the person themselves if they're happy with what's happened and has that complaint been resolved. If that complaint goes unresolved and the client leaves, then they take their £20,000 with them. If, for example, they have a friend and they're looking for a home care provider, and what they'll say to that person is, don't go with Meloosha Homecare, because when you complain, they don't do anything about it. So there's another £20,000 that you've lost that year. And potentially, private clients will stay with you a long time if they're happy. So that's just a year. And if you think about over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's a very costly mistake, or it's very costly just to ignore your complaints rather than get them resolved. And the best way to resolve or know that they're resolved is simply by communicating with that person and saying, we put step A, B and C into place. Has that resolved the issue? Monitor what's been happening, review it, and speak with the person. And the person will tell you if they're happy or not.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, again, doing these things properly, putting processes in place and communicating correctly, set expectations, communicate. To improve your culture, you need to communicate with staff, you need to train them properly, you need to look after your staff properly, because you as a care company are only good as your worst member of staff out there. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot observe everything. No. Your managers, your supervisors are not everywhere. And if you're not protecting your staff, if you're not making sure they're competent, they know what you're doing, basically over a period of time, say goodbye to your business, because these people are the ones who are representing your business.
Yeah, and it's funny, that, Melody, because when you go to a client, an initial assessment, you go that you're selling yourself and you're selling your business, but are you putting the expectations very high to what you can provide? Because that itself will generate lots of complaints. So if you're not meeting the expectations that you've promised that you're going to deliver, on the back of that, you're going to get lots of complaints. So you need to have the foundations there for what you're promising. And if they're not there, that itself will generate lots of complaints. And on the back of that, you need to look at maybe your recruitment process. Is that needing strengthened? Your onboarding process, is it enough? Is it robust enough to be sending staff out in that field on their own? So there's lots of different elements of it that can generate a complaint. But the very first initial assessment, when you're talking about your business and what you're going to deliver, if you're putting your expectations quite high, that person's going to expect that. Yeah, and if you can't deliver that, that's going to cause complaints. So you need to look at what your business is, and are you able to provide what you're saying you're going to provide? If not, look at that part and fix it. That's because that is exactly where all your complaints come. People have high expectations because that's what you're telling them, and you're not delivering. So
and exactly. And if you're not, I find in the past 10 years I've been in care, more than that, since 2011. If you genuinely provide good training, support your staff, and support your staff and mentor them and really look after them, you'll make lots of money.
Yeah, and it's more than just the training. So,
well, if you don't support your staff, you're setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and your business, because at the end of the day, like you say, it's your staff that are out there providing the quality. But if you're not training them well or supporting them well, that quality is going to drop.
Yeah, care is one of those businesses, guys, that if you provide a good service, money will follow.
Yeah.
All right. You don't actually need to sit in your office and have a plan of how you're going to make lots and lots of money. If the quality of service is there, I kid you not, money will follow.
And again, that's culture. So do as I do, say as I say. And when people aren't looking, you need your staff still to be doing the things or providing the quality care and expectations that you've been speaking about for however long. So it's you are the one that staff are looking at, and whatever you're portraying and telling them, it kind of sticks, and that's where your culture starts. So you need to talk about your vision, you need to get staff on board, you need to talk about your culture, you need to talk about your values and how you apply them out in the field. But you're right with trainings, and a lot of trainings are online now, and that drops the quality. And just because somebody has completed an online course doesn't make them competent.
Yeah.
Your job is then to provide that support after the training, where you're shadowing and maybe mentoring, a buddy system, extra trainings and check-ins, regular check-ins with new staff, because it can be quite overwhelming for staff. We've got challenging clients out there. We've got complex clients with complex needs. There's lots and lots of challenges out there. And just simply by saying, right, you've done your e-learning, we've shadowed you for a couple of hours, off you go. You're not going to get a good result by doing that.
No. We are actually working on a lot of examples just now. I don't know if our conversations for people who are not in care make sense, or we're just talking jargon, but, giving you examples, for example, in a branch, we have a couple of complaints, and these complaints could have really been sorted out back in January, within a couple of days.
They could have actually been prevented.
Yeah, prevented,
Yeah, they could have been prevented.
Their onboarding wasn't good enough, and onboarding means when the staff comes and they
set your expectations.
Set your expectation, you complete your training, and you're sending them out there to your clients, and they're not really they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't know what's expected.
Into practice without, especially if they're new in care. Obviously, if they're experienced and they've done the job before, it is different. They need a bit less support. But if somebody's brand new into the sector and you've just given them a whole bunch of e-learnings, especially, you need to kind of space it out. If you think, I've given you 23 e-learnings in a week, how much information are you going to process? Not very much. So it's really, really important to spread it out, figure out what's important to your business, because every business is slightly different depending on your client's needs. So there are certain trainings that are just standard. So you're moving and handling, your adult support and protection, safeguarding if you're down England, medication, all of the ones. But then look at your client base and really structure your training around what support your clients are needing. So you can break it down rather than giving somebody 23 trainings for 1 week. Like realistically, that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work.
No, if you have the structure of, no, it doesn't work. You really need to shadow your staff. You need to be there with them. You need to monitor them. You need to, you know.
I'll give you an example. When I first started working in care out in the field, it came. I was really unorganised, and I would do my personal care, and I had nothing ready. I was running back and forward, and it took somebody a bit senior and said, "Don, if you just get all the clothes ready, get the basin, get everything together, then it will stop you running back and forward." And never occurred to me. Because I was so focused on all these things, keeping the client happy, and I was going to do something wrong, it didn't occur to me to be organised in the beginning. But nobody had told me that when I first started. And if somebody in my training had just said, "Dom, this is how we do personal care, and it's really important that you get the basin, the clothes, the pad, everything that you need to hand," and it stops you running back and forward. But it took a senior to come in, because I was working on my own. I think I was getting a supervision, and she gave me that wee tip, and it made my life 100 times easier after that.
Yeah, I also, you know what I'm passionate about in Meloosha Homecare, and if I can get that across to all my franchisees, I think we've done a huge achievement. I would like Meloosha Homecare to have a really nice learning culture, right? I have a team, the team that I work with in my own branch in Edinburgh, I worked with for 10 years, right? Dawn is the very first person I ever recruited 10 years ago when I started my business, okay? And those people are still working in Edinburgh. And have they ever been scared to come and tell me, Melody, you've made a mistake? No. It's different if somebody comes and makes the same mistake over and over and over. Goodbye, see you later. The relationship is not working. But people are human. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. And if everybody gets sacked for the first mistakes they've made, nobody would be holding a job. Nobody would be running a business.
You would have a business.
Yeah, but it's, you know, how do we learn from it? People make mistakes. Set a culture where people can come to you and say, I've made this mistake. How can we fix it? And how can we make sure it doesn't happen again?
And I think reflection's key, and especially getting your staff to reflect. If something's happened, maybe there has been a complaint or there's been an incident, it's really important to get your staff to reflect, like, if I'd done something different, would I have got a different outcome at the end of that? Or could I have done something differently? Or if I was to approach that again, would I do it differently, or would I do it the same way? I think reflecting back on what's went wrong and really understand that, I think it gives you an understanding of, right, next time I'm not going to do that because that happened.
And you need to get over yourself. As a business owner, it's so embarrassing when you make mistakes. It really is. But you just need to get over yourself. It is what it is. And I'm not saying laugh it off, but just own up to it.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to culture as well. Nobody has all the answers, and you really rely on your team to help with that. So obviously, if your team come to you for answers, you can go away and do your research, or if you don't have the answer, or you could ask somebody else that might have, might know better. But the whole point of being a leader is that you've got a team to do specific things. So you don't know how to do that. If you did, you'd probably do it yourself. Why would you pay for somebody else to do it?
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely not having an ego in it, and not knowing all the answers, and not saying to your team you do know all the answers, because when you don't, that's when you look silly.
Yeah, and it's and that's the beauty of franchising. It's teamwork. We can all learn from each other. And I can tell you guys that even in the franchisor in our office, learning is very important. One of our challenges for me and Dawn is at the moment is that we are expanding our own team in the national office, and you know, I need to bring people into this office who have the same values as me and Dawn, and they can understand my vision, and I get to explain to them properly what my vision is. You know, franchise is more than just a contract. We partner with people. We're their mentors. We help them make strategic decisions, plan for the business, plan for the expansions. I had my own branch for 8 years, and then I sold the business. I set up the business in a way. When the new owner bought it, the structure was in place. It wasn't perfect, and it still isn't perfect, but the structure was in place. And the person who bought my business, who's never ever done care before and never been in the care sector before, managed to double the income. All right. When I sold the business, their turnover was 1.3 million, and now their turnover is 2 million. Okay, so the structure was there, the culture was there, the setup was there for a new person to come in. I forgot my point.
Expanding, strategic thinking.
Yeah. And what I don't need is, how to translate my vision to my team and how to communicate our culture, that as soon as something goes wrong, my new franchise managers don't come and say, well, the franchise agreement says this and this, will terminate. No, that's the last option. The solution is not to terminate. The whole point of people buying a franchise from us is because they have space to learn. They have us to support them, to mentor them, help them make difficult decisions. And, if we work over and over again for a long period of time with the same issue that is not resolving, maybe at some point we need to sit down and discuss the franchise agreement. But one of the reasons franchise businesses are successful is because of the team that is supported. If you were to go and start a business on your own, it's a lot more likely that you can fail as opposed to buy a franchise. Apparently, the failure rate in franchising world for business is only 5%, which is very low. Whereas if you start on your own, it's a lot higher. It's because of the team and the fact that we pull together, and we're not their bosses. They're not our clients. We're business partners. They do well, we do well. They make money, we make money. So it's an all our interest. So I suppose for us in the head office, in our national office, the challenge is, how do I then expand us to bring support that is suitable for our franchises and for the vision and goal that we
take
have.
our own advice, I think. We give all the advice to the franchisees, and then we take our own.
I want to talk about a little bit about marketing. We're still within time in terms of culture. Okay, in terms of culture, and that's the different part of, we now have franchises that are all from different countries, and how do you mix in with the British culture and society in order to gain trust and attract clients, because people buy from people, and very much so in care. Is not necessarily a sales pitch, is getting to know you, trusting you. I value your values, and I trust your vision, and then I know someone who needs care, and then I recommend them. And and I think sometimes our franchisees, when they do their marketing, they forget about this part.
It's really important.
We've had to encourage them to mix with the community.
And how to mix with the community, and what kind of things to discuss. And I think we spoke about that in the last podcast, but it is about building up relationships. That is it, and it's building up trust, and people trust familiarity, especially British people. And that's how brands work. If you can see a brand over and over again, it's like people that prefer Heinz baked beans to the cheaper version of baked beans. They go with that because it's familiar and they know what they're getting. And that's what a brand is all about. And it's building up trust. I trust that tin of beans because I know exactly what I'm getting, and I know what it tastes like. And that's what franchising and branding is. But it does take you to go out and speak to people. It takes you to go out and build up relationships. And it's not easy. It can put you out your comfort zone, but it comes down to your attitude. If you want your business to grow, it's one of the things that you have to really embrace and go for it. Go for it with marketing and networking.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's I think that's it.
Thank you for listening. Till tomorrow.
Come up with something else.